just as a quick little thing, the event stage is live, so if you want to hop in, raise your hand, ask questions during the stream, you can hop on in and do that. Other than that, we're gonna get right on into it. Hello guys, I'm your boss, Joe Boss. Welcome to another weekly trade plan stream. So we're gonna get right on to it here. So this is the event stage. We're going to go down the route of checking all of the major research forums we have here in the Discord. And then we're going to be looking at charts as we go through this stuff. Now, there's been constant developments with the Iran intervention that's likely going to happen. We've had a lot of updates very, very recently here. I mean, I'm very happy to see so many people staying on top of the research and posting stuff that they find on X. I mean, it's been a lot of help with staying on top of stuff. So let's see here. Trump has decided to attack Iran on Monday or Tuesday, and it seems like that has come and gone. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Raising Kane, seems to be a bit hesitant about going into Iran. Unverified sources claim Iran's leader is dead, which is definitely not true, because now he's been making statements. I mean, catching all of the rumors and putting them into one spot is a good way to be like, okay, you can't necessarily take all this stuff at face value as soon as it comes out, especially these rumors of leaders being killed and whatnot. The administration has to make its case to the American people, says Chuck Schumer. I mean, J.D. Vance announces the U.S. has evidence of Iran trying to build a nuclear weapon. Fed Kasher has been removed from his position as director of the Joint Staff only after taking his post in November. My guess is that based on limited but not extensive contact with Navy warfighters, is that he holds the position that a war for Iran would be a disaster. I don't want to be too specific, but I believe from what I know that this view is widely held among particular naval personnel. I believe it cuts off right there. Let's see here. Iran has not accepted any of the main conditions related to nuclear and missile issues. And that was on the 26th. And then we're watching things move. And then the demands from the United States to Iran in Geneva got leaked. And that moved markets quite a bit. And then there's Kushner and Witkoff, the Iranian official. And that more or less had a new article that confirmed what the conditions were from the U.S. side. Trump is set to meet all parties on the Iran issue tomorrow, which is today, at 3 p.m., which is in an hour and a half. So if the stream goes on for long enough, that's when that meeting starts, and we'll see whether or not there's actually anything comes out of it right away. Taliban are sending heavy reinforcements to the Pakistan-Afghanistan border. And we actually set up a new thread on the Afghani-Paki war. Is this prep for a larger move? Of course, skies over Lebanon lit up. Striking Hezbollah weapon storage sites. Pentagon announced it will use Iran's own weapon against Iran. These are kamikaze drones. You do not announce kamikaze drone units is, quote, ready to participate unless participation is being planned. This is something I found from Meticulous. Forecasters assign a 75% probability that the U.S. will attack Iran before April, so before the end of March, up 5 points from last week. This was just yesterday, so 75% chance odds. This is something in Spanish, but this is saying death to the United States, death to England, death to Israel. That's what Khomeini is saying, and clearly he's not dead. Pakistan's Minister of Defense stated that Pakistan is now at war with Afghanistan. Some laughing emojis there. Then we see another bit here. Pakistan preemptively took out Taliban leadership that would have, to say the least, made the security situation on Iran's eastern border much more dangerous during potential regime change. So that if the United States went into Iran, the Iranians are concerned about invasion from their eastern borders. And it seems like this blowout between Pakistan and Afghanistan is actually to deter an eastern front, as well as a western front from the United States. Breaking huge amounts of U.S. Air Force assets moving toward the Middle East overnight, which this is, again, still going on. This huge train of supply just keeps going through from the United States, and it's just a huge, huge buildup. I have an extra comment on after Iran, all these assets are going to be pretty close to the Middle East, so I'm going to bring something up about this a bit later. Qatar Airways announced cancellation of flights to Tehran until June 30th. So retail airplanes going down. Heavy GPS jamming hits Iran, including Tehran. Department of State authorized the departure of non-emergency U.S. government personnel and family members of U.S. government personnel from Mission Israel due to safety risks. Breaking, the U.S. has evacuated all non-essential staff and their families from its embassy in Israel. And we can click on that and get the whole picture there. On February 27th, the Department of State authorized the departure of non-emergency U.S. government personnel and family members of U.S. government personnel from Mission Israel due to safety risks. In response to security incidents and without advance notice, the U.S. Embassy may further restrict or prohibit U.S. government employees and their family members from traveling to certain areas of Israel, the Old City of Jerusalem, and the West Bank. Persons may wish to consider leaving Israel while commercial flights are available. That's a nice way of putting you might not get a flight out if shit hits the fan. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei calls for the death of President Trump. Let me clarify something for the leaders of the United States. And phrase death to America means death to Trump and his team, not the American people. Okay. Don't necessarily trust that personally. Let's see here. This is a Bloomberg article titled Iran Seen Conducting Regular Activity at Bombed Enrichment Sites. That's really not good. Oh. That I was going to belch or something there. All right, let's continue on, get ourselves updated on what's going on with Iran from all the research we've done in the research thread so far this week. China has told its citizens to leave Iran immediately. China, the country that is currently selling Iran CM 302 anti-ship missiles. A country whose satellites have been photographing every American base, every carrier departure, every F-22 on Israeli tarmac. So they're saying, hey, yeah, get the hell out. A big fire started in Qom, Iran. And then these are more updates from earlier today that will go down. U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent on X says Iran uses financial systems to sell illicit oil. U.S. crude stockpiles grow in latest week by most since February 2023. So people are stockpiling oil in anticipation of potential casualty or collateral fire at the Strait of Hormuz with either refineries, ports, or the oil pumps at the fields around. House Democrats seek Iran war powers resolution vote next week. Okay, we gotta watch out for that. It would be good to know, or if anybody has any additional information, when will this resolution vote occur? That is what I want to know, is when will this vote take place? Trump is expected to convene senior advisors on Friday. We already read that a little bit earlier. For a detailed discussion on Iran to decide on the course of action towards Tehran, Israel, citing American officials. Okay, this is a big fat one on the International Atomic Energy Agency. They're going to conduct verification activities. They want to conduct verification activities in Iran without further delay. The International Atomic Energy Agency report, is it a matter of increasing concern? It is a matter of increasing concern that Iran has never provided the International Atomic Energy Agency with access to its enrichment facilities at Isfahan since it was first declared in June. International Atomic Energy Agency report uranium enriched up to 20 to 60% was stored at tunnel complex in Isfahan. Regular vehicle activity could be seen around entrance in satellite imagery. The IAEA does not know the precise whereabouts of Iran's declared enrichment facility at Isfahan, or whether it contains nuclear materials or is operational. As of June 13th, Iran's stock of uranium enriched up to 20% in UF6 form is still estimated at 184.1 kilograms. The International Atomic Energy Agency lack of access to verify Iran's enriched uranium stocks is a matter of proliferation concern. Okay. Iran has not provided any report to the IAEA on the status of its attacked nuclear facilities and their associated nuclear materials, or provided access to them. The IAEA report Iran must address with utmost urgency location of uranium. Location, I believe, or uranium? I think that's of uranium. Britain has temporarily withdrawn its staff from Iran due to security situation. So everyone's pulling out. Everyone is pulling out. U.S. Secretary of State Rubio will travel to Israel from March 2nd to March 3rd and will discuss Iran, Lebanon, and Gaza. Now, this is particularly interesting. Why is the United States pulling everyone out of Israel? And then Rubio is going to Israel, of course, to discuss these things. But as the United States is pulling people out due to security concerns, they're sending one of, if not one of the most important political figures in the United States to a spot where they're actually withdrawing people from, especially government officials. So that doesn't make too much sense unless essentially he's going to some protected facilities that Israel has. for these particular meetings. So I am genuinely curious about what the exception is here and why is it important for Rubio to physically go there as they're withdrawing all these people. So let's continue on. Trump, we can add like a question. Trump, I have made a decision on Iran, not happy with how they negotiate. And then we have some stuff on Cuba. We have a thread on Cuba, actually. But let's stick with Iran. Iran can't have nuclear weapons, is what Trump has said. Trump says again, maybe we'll have a friendly takeover of Cuba. And then again, I'm not very happy with Iran. But more talks are expected on Friday. Trump continues, there may or may not be regime change in Iran. And then something to Cuba again. Trump on Iran says we're negotiating. Iran isn't saying the golden words. No nuclear weapons. Pretty much. Trump asked about using military force in Iran. I don't want to, but sometimes you have to. Trump on Iran saying additional talks are today still. And then Trump on Iran military action. I would love not to use it. Okay. So that gets us caught up with everything that has happened so far in the research thread on Iran. Now we can continue on with the next bit in the research thread. But we saw a couple of things. We saw oil discussed and we saw uranium discussed. So real quick, we can go over here, full screen our chart, and I can move myself. I can move myself over here. Yeah, I accidentally grabbed the wrong thing. Bump, bump. You can make this a bit bigger, so it should be easier for everyone to see. Great, great, great. So let's go to oil. Oil saw a bit of a jump here going into end of week. Not totally sure what that's about. Maybe it's based off of the fact that the meeting has concluded and that with Rubio going to Israel, and it seems like it doesn't look like there'll be a strike over the weekend given this kind of move, but there have definitely been times where surprises happen over the weekend that totally reverse these nice positive end of week moves. And with the volatility and with the uncertainty, it's quite hard to get a grip on things. If we look at Wayne's Pivots Pro real quick here, it's been sideways. You've been range bound between S1, R1 the entire week. And we can look at the probability pivots. Oh, yeah, that's right. We have to go to a 12-hour so it loads enough historical data. So this is just for the week. And this is saying, yeah, most of the time your top for the week comes in below R1. And then we can change the data source, the probability data source, to low here. And then we can see, okay, for this current week, most of the lows for the week come in right here between S0.5 and S1. This orange dotted line is the probability weighted pivot priced at $63.89. And 49.13% of lows historically for this particular week of the year have the lows come in between S0.5 and S1. So that looked like a particularly excellent buy. Oh man, I love building indicators. I love these things. It's quite nice. And you can see this is quite heavy peaked. You have very, very thin distribution at these edges here, and then a huge peak. And then next week you get a bit less variability, usually next week. But with the geopolitical issues right now with Iran, it's not so easy to tell whether or not this will hold, because this is seasonal data. And when you are not anticipating, you don't have a seasonal expectation, it's not reasonable to assume that the probabilities or the nominal expectations you would set using seasonal data would hold. Meaning, if you would nominally expect, hey, most of the time next week, the low will probably be around, again, between S0.5, S1, so that's between 65.25 and 64.39, with the probability weighted pivot at 64.85. So something along these lines, a move down and then maybe higher, or it can be higher and then down. This is not a timing indicator. Pivots themselves are generally not timing indicators. They help with indicating price over a higher time frame. So they say, okay, within this higher time frame, here are the prices we could hit. They're not telling you exactly what day of the week or what time of the day a particular price will be hit. You're going to need other indicators for that. And what a lot of people like to do, including myself, is take context clues and doing proper research for geopolitical events, for the economic calendar, to stay on top of these things. So let's go ahead and continue on and look at the high odds now for next week. So there is a nice consolidation for the lows there, but with the volatility going in, we may hit this. Or if there's, let's say, for example, a strike on Iran, the US goes into Iran over the weekend, you could very easily see really high, far up pivots. Now, most of the time, it looks like we have a what's called a bimodal distribution of tops for next week. So most of the time, the top comes in here between R0.5 and R1, or here between R2.5 and R2. So that's probably not going to happen right here, right off the bat, unless there's no attack next week. And if you don't understand why I'm saying we're probably not going to see oil jump up to these super high levels next week, if the US doesn't go into Iran, let me be very clear. If the Strait of Hormuz goes offline, if the oil refineries that are off the coast on the Iranian side of the Strait of Hormuz go offline, you can end up here very easily. It's been a risk that's been talked about, investigated, and researched in depth for probably the last 40 years. Everyone knows how critical it is for global energy prices for the Strait of Hormuz to keep flowing oil, right? The spice must flow, right? In this case, Strait of Hormuz is Arrakis. Now, in the scenario where there is no invasion, or let's say there even is an invasion, but the refineries don't go offline, ports are not closed, or they're only closed temporarily, let's say less than 2 months, and the oil fields themselves are not seen as collateral damage, there's no collateral damage with the oil fields, then on the announcement that the United States has gone into Iran, you could likely see a jump. And then depending on how fast the operation is, so if the operation goes on for, let's say, 3 weeks, there's 3 weeks of fighting, and it's quite fast, and there's regime change, and then the United States dips. And then they have essentially a contingent set up to keep Afghanistan and Pakistan from trying to go in and assert any kind of control into Iran. Then we'll see. What matters is there, after an invasion into Iran from the United States, stability? Is there not? There doesn't even necessarily need to be an immediate regime change, but is the oil supply stable? And what are the conditions of the sanctions? Does the oil continue to flow? And who does it flow to? Because Lord knows, China is very dependent on the oil in Iran. So maybe the United States and China right now are privately talking about, okay, how do we make sure that China's saying, okay, how do we make sure when the United States goes in, they don't turn off the valve and turn off the oil? Because if we get hurt, they are also going to see higher inflation, and that is very, very against what Trump currently wants. And if there's higher inflation going into the midterms, it could turn out worse for the Republicans. They may win, they may lose, but if there is higher inflation, it would decrease the odds of the Republicans winning in the midterms. So going into Iran has a lot of political ramifications for inflation in the United States, and then how that inflation impacts the election. The midterm election is going to be significant. Also, the success and how long this takes. If we're still in Iran fighting by the midterms, it's gonna hurt the Republicans a lot. So Trump needs something that's in and out. It gets rid of the Ayatollah, essentially. And then protects Iran from these people trying to go in and also meddle in Iranian business. And then maintaining that Iran continues to distribute oil to people who are intensely dependent on it, to the point where if they didn't get the oil, it would spike inflation for the United States and their the United States allies. So that's kind of what's on the line here, and those are the different scenarios we need to be thinking about. And I wanted to do this. So going into next week, there's a lot more uncertainty than just like, we can look at an indicator with some seasonal statistics and determine exactly what to do. Now, this week was particularly great for trading this indicator. That was a fantastic low that we saw. But not every week is going to be like that, especially when you have these exogenous shocks and surprises and wars going on that can directly impact assets like this. Now, there was uranium. We can look at a uranium ETF. I seriously don't think it's going to do a whole lot. But gold is another asset that we can look at that would be it's right now very asymmetrically set up to positively benefit from the invasion into Iran. Very, very likely. Because there's two things going for gold right now. There's the US dollar. Don't get me wrong, a lot of people are now currently switching to seeing a slightly weaker, a slightly stronger US dollar intermittently going into the the US invasion of Iran. But after that invasion, the overarching macro move for the US dollar is lower, and that consensus hasn't really changed from at least all the research that I've seen. Of course, US going into Iran, that would be a spike that sends the US dollar higher, the DXY higher. However, how long would that last? Not too sure. And also, when we're looking at gold prices, a lot of people are exiting dollar positions and putting it into gold. So gold might appreciate based off of the announcement of the United States going into Iran. That is also a consensus take. A lot of people do expect that. But if the United States dollar gets really, 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 really strong on that move, it's not like the invasion of Iran is going to be super great for gold miners or gold refiners, or justify an ETF buying even more gold than they usually do. It's probably going to send gold a little bit lower just on because that's my expectation. I could definitely be wrong, but that's based off my point of view that the United States dollar will get even stronger than gold during a point when if the United States goes into Iran, because they're still negotiating things. We have to still say if, because it hasn't happened yet, even though that is the expectation, is that the United States will go in. Okay, let's continue on. So for gold, wow, that was it. They had all the nail. Probability weighted pivot high right there at 52, 53. And you can see that we're just tapping the wicks here. Man, what a fantastic little indicator. If you guys want access to these indicators, you can get them in the description of this stream here, or video if you're watching the highlight video. Just go to WAP, join the trading group plus indicators, and you can go ahead and try them out. If you need a walkthrough, I can also walk you through them in a little one-on-one session. Let's also look at the lows, the potential lows for gold next week. Wow, pretty tight. Pretty tight. About 50% of the time, the low next week comes in between central pivot and S1. So, wow, we didn't even hit this. Wow, so this is a new historical data point. Wow. So, wow, that is actually insane. That's going to be a brand new data point. So never in the history of gold, for at least the gold futures on COMEX, has the low for the week been above R0.5. That's how sustained the bullish move here is. So wouldn't be surprised to see the same thing happen again if an invasion of Iran occurred. Again, it's a little hard to predict exactly how these assets are going to react on the announcement of an invasion. But it's important to know, okay, here are the different scenarios that can happen. And my personal pick is that the dollar will outgrow and be stronger than gold immediately on the reaction. And then as some time passes, the dollar will revert that strength. And then gold will bounce up, and as well as other assets that pull down based on that move. And oil would probably jump. Oil is definitely going to likely jump indiscriminately higher on the announcement of an invasion. But again, it's going to be dependent on if the oil fields are getting hit and disabled, if the Strait of Hormuz is going offline, if the ports are closing for months and months and months, and if the oil refineries are also going offline. Those are things that we have to consider for a future rebound in oil price, assuming an invasion occurs and oil jumps on the announcement of that invasion. Okay. We can now continue on with our little move here. Now on this side again, we're getting some new posts from Trump. This is the Trump Watch thread where every single one of Trump's posts from Truth Social get posted. So Trump Drillers, a show at State of the Union. Gotcha. We just want to jump to the present. Okay. He's pushing Save America Act right now. Okay. So that's enough there. So let's see here. We went over the Iran thread, and then we have the Cuba thread. It's not totally relevant right now, but we are watching it in the wars and conflicts category here in the research forum. Let me actually check if anyone's here in the stage. No. So no questions need to be answered. Good. I can continue on. And then we have Trump 47 tariffs, USMCA, apparently there's been some negotiations going on behind the scenes. Canada Minister LeBlanc, I am not pessimistic about eventual bilateral sectoral arrangements with the United States. Canadian Minister responsible for U.S. trade, private government-to-government conversations on USMCA are not discouraging. 7, and then this is something about the Fed. So that's nice to see. U.S. Trade Representative Greer on USMCA. We talked to Canadian counterpart on Wednesday, U.S. Trade Representative Greer on USMCA. Canadian counterpart coming to Washington in the coming weeks. So we're going to be getting hopefully some reconciliation going on between Canada and Mexico on the USMCA, because right now, with the tariffs brought down much lower, it's actually some consumers in the United States, instead of going to Canada, where they have beneficially lower tariffs due to the USMCA, now that the tariffs are quite a bit lower for a lot of countries, some consumers in the United States are now going to alternative countries, and that can eat into Canada's growth if enough U.S. consumers go somewhere else other than Canada. Personally, I'd like to continue supporting Canada and Mexico as an American versus countries that we originally had tariffs much, much higher on all the way across the world, who might be undercutting the Canadians and the Mexicans. I'd prefer to work with our trade partners here. I believe there was a country that actually overtook Canada in trade. I think it was Italy, if I'm not mistaken. As a trade partner. Italy is apparently somehow a larger trade partner with the United States than Canada, if I recall correctly. We had some updates on Russia-Ukraine. Zelensky after call with Trump. Ukraine expects next trilateral meeting between Ukraine, Russia, and the United States in March to create opportunity to move talks to leader levels. And then we had this bit here on oil. Russia may cut the budget rule oil price to as low as $45 to $50 per barrel. That would be quite low. I really wonder what the relative or relevant finances are for Russia. How much money do they have to burn to keep the war going on their end? And what businesses do they need to continue operating in order to generate that money? All right. We have, this is a new thread that Ari started. I actually was very happy to see this. This is military buildup and posture under United States Central Command, CENTCOM. And while there has been a buildup in the Middle East with the expectation that the United States would go into Iran, there is also a potential for, once the buildup occurs and let's say the situation goes the way that the United States expects, let's say the whole operations that they have planned are complete. And also here you can see where Afghanistan and Pakistan is, right? So right now these two countries are fighting each other, and if Iran starts getting hit on the Western Front, Afghanistan and Pakistan, the Iranians don't want these guys also coming in from over here, effectively. Okay, so with that little bit pointed out, I made a comment about a pivot. So if the Iranian invasion goes as the United States expects, and they're able to initiate regime change and remove the Ayatollah from Iran and destroy Iran's nuclear facilities directly and confiscate the enriched uranium from Iran, while also protecting Iranians' eastern border from the conflict. And for all we know, the United States could directly pivot into telling Afghanistan and Pakistan not to fight and ending that war, which Trump very much would likely want to have under his belt. this position in the world, right here, having this huge U.S. military buildup to take care of these conflicts, could easily be pivoted into Ukraine. And I believe that there is a non-zero probability that for the last several weeks, as all this U.S. military infrastructure has been moved over to take care of the Iranian situation and execute an Iranian operation, that the Russians are kind of freaking out. Because the last thing they want is the United States to get directly involved in the conflict with Ukraine militarily, or the United States to be at the Russian front. And I would not be totally surprised if that idea has sprung into the consciousness of some Russian military officials and U.S. military officials that by the United States being here at this location, it is a much less significant logistical hurdle to assist the Ukrainians in ending the war with Russia by being positioned here rather than all the way across the world. So while the United States originally has been saying, okay, Europeans, you have to go ahead and step up to the plate for Ukraine. My only major concern is, well, if the United States pivots and let's say they complete the operation in Iran and they extend it to stopping the war between Afghanistan and Pakistan, then there's this moment of, do we pivot to Ukraine and Russia? I think that's going to be another fundamental moment in history, whether or not that pivot is made. And also, a lot of Republicans do not want the United States to intervene in Ukraine. A lot of them don't. So it would not be good. My expectation is it would not be good for the Republicans if the United States was involved in the war at the point of the midterms. Like, they would have to end the war with Russia and Ukraine before the midterms if the United States military decides to pivot after completing these operations in the Middle East to the Russia-Ukraine war. They'd need that war to essentially be concluded before the midterms. Now, this is all very much pie in the sky stuff, but imagine Trump goes in, completes the operation in Iran, ends the war with Afghanistan and Pakistan, pivots to Russia, and then is able to finally secure peace between Ukraine and Russia. Holy hell, would that be an absolute insane legacy to get the world actually legitimately closer to a much more peaceful place, actually. Oh man, that would be fantastic. Again, it's very pie in the sky, but I can kind of see the writing on the wall, and it really makes me smile. Now, that's assuming things go according to that plan. There are so many ways this can screw up. For all we know, there could be insurgent Iranian cells in the United States who conduct terrorist attacks in the United States when the United States goes into Iran or in Israel, and you end up with guerrilla fighting in a lot of places and people generally being quite terrified of these insurgents. There have been rumors of, oh my god, the US border has been open for so long. What if one of our enemies, like the Iranians, got a dirty bomb into the United States? And in order to prevent the United States from going in, the Iranians publicly state, okay, we have a dirty bomb in the United States, and if you go in, we will detonate it. But at that point, you have to discern whether or not that's a credible threat from the Iranians, whether or not they're trying to bluff you out of doing the invasion just by saying that they have one in a major city. And if the United States has a way of actually figuring out if that threat is credible or not. Because the Iranians essentially have to prove in some form or fashion that it's not just an empty threat. Again, that's a rumor, it's a hypothetical, and it's one reason why a lot of people don't want to necessarily touch Iran, because they don't want these insurgents to go through an attack. And for all we know, there could be these insurgents that are also in Europe, and they start terrorizing people in Europe when the United States goes in as well, and the Europeans will definitely think that's incredibly unfair to them, and it will make some people in Europe quite resentful of the United States if that were to occur. But is it the United States' fault that if the Iranians resort to those tactics? No, that's just another reason not to like Iran. So let's we can go through all the pitfalls. We can go through all the reasons why the operation in Iran may or may not work to varying degrees. Why the Afghanistan-Pakistan war might not be stopped by the United States, although I think that's, if the operation in Iran is successful, it's very likely that ending the war between Afghanistan and Pakistan is likely successful. And then the big question mark I have is there a pivot now to Ukraine and Russia? And there's a lot of different ways that can go, because Russia's a military power. And of course, the Ukrainians are going to start saying, hey, once you're done with Iran, come over here. So they're going to be, even if the United States doesn't say anything publicly about their options to pivot to that theater, the Ukrainians will publicly say, oh, come over here and help us out. A lot of them, I bet, would. However, given that there's now likely going to be another trilateral meeting between Russia, Ukraine, and the United States in March, sometime in March, we have to do our research and get the dates. So if you are watching that, please go to the Russia-Ukraine thread and post those dates when you find them. It would be, oh, and by the way, this is the political leader of the opposition in France talking about supporting Ukraine and how Europe needs to help with supporting Ukraine. So, to get back on point from that little deviation, give me a moment. Alrighty. I'm going to say, once there's that trilateral meeting between Russia, Ukraine, and the United States sometime in March, and as soon as the information is available, please, if you're also doing research on this topic, share it in the Russia-Ukraine war thread so then everyone else can get notified when there's news on this topic. These research threads have really been indispensable in staying on top of all of these different things, all these different wars, all these different geopolitical events. So as soon as we have information about when that is, and if it actually is going to happen, because sometimes these meetings are planned and prepped, and then the conflict escalates, and those meetings either get delayed, put off entirely, or then something happens to de-escalate the fighting, so then the meeting can actually happen. So it's important to stay nimble about your expectations in reaction to current developments, and this is how we stay on top of current developments. At least a major way we try and stay on top of them. Okay. When that meeting occurs, I 100% bet that this idea of pivoting the U.S. military force from the Middle Eastern theater to the western front of Russia is to Eastern Europe's theater is going to be brought up. And just very politely, hopefully very politely, although Trump's not always quite polite, to say, hey, we are prepared to pivot, to fight with the Ukrainians against you. But we really don't want to do that because we've been making great progress. Be diplomatic about it. We're making great progress about making peace between you two. Let's get closer to this faster. So then, because it's very expensive, the upkeep costs for the United States military. The faster the United States military is actually engaged in one conflict to the next, the more efficient monetarily it generally is, because then you're not just paying upkeep costs constantly. You're actually putting the military to use. So hopefully the pivot occurs quickly, and what I would like to see is the pie in the sky scenario where you have regime change in Iran, the Ayatollah is out, the oil continues to flow out of Iran, then you have the Pakistan-Afghanistan war concluded, and you have the threat of this pivot from U.S. military forces from the Middle East into the Eastern European theater, and upcoming peace negotiations coming through that are planned around the time where these operations actually would be complete in the Middle East, which is around March. Because remember, we looked at that poly market earlier. Not that poly market, that Metaculus. It's not necessarily market Metaculus. You don't pay money to bet on anything. But we call it a prediction market out of ease. So right here. Will the United States attack Iran before April 2026? And odds are 75%. Now, this isn't a prediction market as to when will the Iranian invasion by the United States, the United States military operation into Iran, end. That's not what this question is asking. The Iranians are markets. These guys here are expecting the United States to be in there before the end of March. The United States can move very, very quickly, and if things do move promptly, during the month of March, there's going to be this next trilateral meeting, most likely between Ukraine, Russia, and the United States. And once the operation is a go, the timeline for how long the United States will be in there hopefully will become a little bit more clear after a couple of weeks. So by the end of March, hopefully we'll have an idea of what the U.S. military presence is going to look like, what the timetable is going to look like. And then we can extrapolate from that when a pivot into the Eastern European Eastern Theater becomes probable. So that's what's on the front of my mind. There's these other things going on. There's been a lot of stuff going on with the cartels in Mexico. A whole lot of stuff. A whole lot of really terrible, 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 terrible stuff. Just so much fun. However, there's been also a lot of good things happening. A lot more cartel members are getting caught. But there's been a lot of political violence, a lot of cartel violence. And it's been getting really, really, really terrible. Yeah, it's been getting pretty bad. So if you want to stay up to date on the cartel stuff, I have a research thread on that here. And then here's the new thread on Afghanistan and Pakistan. And there isn't an official Wikipedia page for it yet. It's still in the Afghan-Pakistan clashes sections, even though the two countries have officially I believe, declared war on each other. I believe the Pakistan side has declared war. Yeah. Pakistan state-run media has now confirmed that the Pakistan Air Force carried out a number of strikes. I'm pretty sure there was a head of state who declared that war had begun, that they had officially declared war. Outside of that, we have election information. So this is Canada's election, next federal election coming up. Really not looking good for the Conservatives at the moment. And then we have the midterm elections here. So as we get developments of U.S. polling from the U.S. operations in the Middle East and the European Eastern Front potentially, we'll be watching midterm election polls of Republicans and Democrats in response to those events and updating them here. Okay, we can check out DXY real quick, because DXY is very likely going to move a bit more positively, especially if there's a move over the weekend. We will see if there's a move over the weekend into Iran, but these markets will be closed by then. And again, this here with this indicator, this is seasonal data. Let me go ahead and move myself over here to the other side of the screen. So looking at the DXY, when we are looking at this indicator, we're looking at seasonal odds. And when the seasonal odds are running into extreme events, exogenous shocks, surprises, you cannot assume that the seasonal data will adequately reflect what to expect going forward. Because we've had a whole lot of sideways here. We can, on the move that the United States begins their operation into Iran, we'd expect the US dollar to move higher. How much higher? Let's go ahead and check out maybe the monthly highs here, at least relevant to seasonal data, so we have some sort of expectation here. Wow. Most of the time, the top for the month seasonally comes in below our 1.5. So more or less around R1, below R1. Call it 98. So at the announcement of the operation, I'd expect dollar to trade in the 99 handle. So we'd probably move higher up first into the mid to upper 89s. And then until uncertainty about Iran's oil capabilities are clarified, we'd probably move into the 99s, would be my expectation. And then reverse lower. We can also look at the ranges for next month. Yeah. Wow. There's a big old fat peak here just in the first half of the 100 handle. Yeah. So I would be definitely careful. Definitely careful. It seems like this R2 level, or what is it? Yeah, that R2 at 99 is the threshold here for going higher. So you have a peak, trough, here's your threshold, and then the next peak. So past here, let's say we get the announcement of the operation in Iran from the United States beginning. At that point, it depends on how long the operation takes and what are the uncertainties. The longer the operation goes on for, and also the rumor mill can cause huge, massive swings. So if there's any kind of rumor from any kind of even moderately credible institution that oil refineries are shutting down or The Strait of Hormuz ports are being hit. On the announcement, I expect we go high, and then on any kind of rumor or confirmation that oil capacity or oil refinery, anything that can impact Iranian oil export capabilities is negatively impacted, we can definitely start going significantly higher. However, there's also a counter argument that can be made that I have seen now that we're on the dollar chart. And that's as oil prices go higher, if that scenario occurs, and by that scenario, I explicitly mean the oil capabilities of exporting oil out of Iran decrease due to the U.S. operation in Iran, then I would then expect oil to go much, much higher because world oil supply would be going lower. So there'd be an increase in oil prices in order to compensate for the lower supply. Because now there's all this demand that still has to be met. But if the Strait of Hormuz goes offline for far too long, that's like 20% of the world's oil supply. That's not great. Now, I don't think the entire Strait of Hormuz is going to be shut down. Just the Iranian side of the strait. So I believe it's mostly going to hurt China. I think it's like 3-4 million barrels per day. It's a lot. It can really hurt China. But then you also have to consider the fact of, okay, oil goes higher, and we have to look at the degree to which oil supply is impacted by a U.S. operation into Iran. What's the point? What's the counterexample here for DXY for the U.S. dollar? Well, the counterexample would be if the rising cost of oil goes really high, let's say into the 90s, because there's significant damage and extended port closures to Iran's ability to export oil, then that could very likely increase inflation in the United States. And higher inflation in the United States would mean that the FOMC is not going to be cutting. It actually would make the US dollar stronger. It's I believe the counterexample I was referring to was it would increase inflation and hurt growth to some extent, and it would hurt the Republicans' chances of getting into the midterms. But no, it would probably continue to send the US dollar higher on expectations that the FOMC would at least have to maintain their current rate, consider hiking, or at least extend out their future expectation, the timing of when they would have to cut rates to account for the higher inflation. Now, maybe that gets ironically mitigated in that scenario by the tariffs coming down in the United States after the United States Supreme Court overruled the IEEPA tariffs. So, ironically, getting the tariffs overturned at this point in time, if oil were to spike, might counterintuitively could help actually assist mitigating the impact of higher inflation in the United States. It will be interesting to see if there's anyone who does any research on that front. I would love to be able to do that research myself for sure. Okay. I believe I've covered every topic I wanted to cover today. Also, I thank you guys for watching the stream all the way through. Again, most of the people watching the stream are people who are already in the trading group, who already have these indicators. So if you haven't, you can start a 10-day free trial. Go ahead, try out the indicators, come hang out with us in the trading group. And all the research that you saw here on the stream, all this is free. None of this is hidden behind a paywall. Everyone who wants to participate in the research side of this community can absolutely come in, help, give your thoughts and research, because timing, getting the information, and collaborating with others on doing this research is really, really important. And it should not be, frankly, behind a paywall to do this. It's one thing when you have a bunch of professionals writing outlooks for you from a bank and you're paying for that research. It's another thing when everything's being crowdsourced for free in a community. You can kind of make an analogy similar to open source intelligence, because we actually refer to a lot of open source intelligence accounts when it comes down to the things that we are looking for and find and share in these research threads. So I highly recommend that you guys come to future weekly trade plan meetings. Again, if you've watched all the way through, of course, I bet you guys would make it to these. And yeah, I'll say thank you very much again for watching. I'll see you guys in the trade group. I'll see you guys in the trading room. I'll see you guys around. See you guys